I'd like to do a little video on repairing the spindles on a New Holland 914A mower deck. If you note, this is a video for the newer type mower decks. Mine's somewhere in that 2000, 2004 range. If you note, on these style decks, the spindles, the studs are facing downwards. I believe in the older decks, the assembly was a little bit different and the studs are facing upwards. So this is for a little bit of the newer style mower deck. So the first thing you want to do is you got to get the spindle off the deck. So you take off the blades. Normally you can use a block of wood or something and remove the nut from underneath. And I don't know, I've never had anybody tell me they couldn't get the blades off. So that seems to be a pretty easy project. Once you do that, the nuts need to come off the studs. You know, you tip the deck over, however you can get them at them nice and easy. It's I had my deck tilted up on blocks sideways so I could get at both sides pretty easily. And these came off bad. I didn't seem to have a problem getting these nuts off. The one thing that I've heard people have a little bit of a complaint about is how to get this nut off. So what I did was I found something that fit in one of these holes, and this here is a 14 millimeter Allen socket. I found that, and then use that to bear against one of the studs here. And then I put in a wrench and shimmed it so it stayed tight, and then a 1 1/8 socket to break it loose. At that, obviously I set this back in the deck. I didn't put any nuts on it, but I set it back in the deck with a nice extension pipe and just gently pushing. I was able to break this loose nice and easy. So once we got that nut off, then you have the spindle all together without the nut, and we can take a look at it. Just imagine the spindle is still covering the the shaft here is still, and bearings, everything's still in the spindle assembly. Now you'll have to get this keyway out. Mine was a little bit sticky, so I just stuck the keyway in the vise and just kind of gave it a little bit of a tilt, and it came right out. Cleaned them up a little bit, and they seem to slide back into place pretty easily. At this point, you can once you get the keyway out, then the axle shaft, it seems to slide right out of the bottom. Once you get it out of the bottom, then to remove the bearings, you can use a socket or some other kind of punch or something to drive the bearing and the corresponding seal out of either end. At that point, you've pretty much got the thing apart. So the last step is, because we're putting in new bearings, is, and these are pretty cheap, by the way. So unless they really spin smoothly and you just want to re-grease them or something like that, or just do a maintenance check, it's like we just went ahead and replaced. By the way, this is an old crappy, I don't even know why I'm doing this project on this mower, but I picked this mower up really cheap. I decided to rebuild it. Pretty beefy piece of equipment, by the way. And I don't know, if you really take care of them, you should probably be able to service them indefinitely. But these guys, I've never really had a problem. I just come around here, tappy, 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 and seem to drive these inner races out. It's nice to have a little bit of a bigger hammer. If you don't have one of these, a 4-pound mallet is absolutely indispensable for doing projects like this. Sometimes you have to have a little bit more of a delicate touch, but once you get these guys out, then it's like I like to keep some nice clean rags, clean everything up really, really nice. You can dress up the seal surfaces. If there's a little bit of rust, you can dress it up with a little bit of sandpaper. It might not be a mortal sin. I'm not sure, but you have to check with the higher authorities on that. So I like to clean stuff up a little bit. Once again, clean, really, really nice. And then to drive the new bearings in, I like to take one of the old bearings and I'll put it on the grind wheel so that there's no way it's going to get caught. It's just slightly loose. And then I take that, install one of the old bearings in, and then put the new race in, then just very gently, just at the starting point, make sure it's going straight. That's the hardest part at that point. And then just drive it all the way in, you know, big hammer, a kind of nice friend. Obviously, when I have something underneath, this kind of flimsy here, it's probably better to do it on the visor, somewhere better supported. And just be that's the one thing, just be very slow and careful with it. I don't seem to have a problem with it, so on and so forth. So once you get the bearings back in, all this stuff is at this point is a reverse of installation. But just to go through it, install the lower bearing on the shaft and the spacer, set it up through the spindle housing, place the top bearing on, place the top bearing spacer back on, place the keyway back in, and then well, you could do the keyway after you drive drive the upper seal back in. So, and driving the upper seal, obviously you notice the upper seal looks different from the lower, and it's designed to let, as you pump grease in, the grease pass upwards and out. The lower has a double lip. You can see the entire design is different. These look kind of look rough, but the rubber seems flexible and they all seem okay. So I'm not spending money on that. It seems to be good. So, and plus I keep buying lube pretty regularly anyways. So, yeah, the upper seal seemed to drive in pretty easy. Look, this one is almost falling in. It's not that tight of a fit. You got everything lubed up good. This shouldn't have a problem putting it in. So once you get the top seal in, you got your spindle installed. Now you go back to the reverse of before, and you install your little jig here. Actually, it's kind of funny. It's I have a old piston rod for connecting rod, piston rod, whatever, from an old RMZ 250. That seems to fit pretty close, but the 14 mil seemed to fit a little bit closer. If you have a socket, anything that'll stick through there, and then use something to jam up against the spindle housing, the pulley up against the spindle housing, do fine. Set it back in the mower deck, and then tighten your nut. Oh, by the way, the first thing you do once you get it off is take off the grease fitting here. That pretty much should be it. Thank you for watching. By the way, if any suggestions on doing a quicker, easier, this is just the way I figured out doing it. I haven't seen any other videos on this. So thanks for watching. Have a great day. One thing I forgot to mention here is don't forget to install the bottom spacer. It does have to be driven in all the way. One good way to check is this spacer for the blade. If it spins freely, it looks like there's like a little gap. It's not binding on anything. You know that this guy here is all the way spaced. And on a final note, if you look at the design of this system, if you are going to take it apart, and before you take it apart, you find that there is any sort of axial play, that there's a little bit of wiggle between the pulley and the bottom piece, it probably is time to replace the bearing. There is no room for adjustment on this system to tighten up the free play on these. This spacer here, I think it's 0.606 is the limit, and you can measure that with a caliper to make sure that your spacer, I don't see why the spacer would ever change any dimension unless you really burn something up. But if you replace it with new bearings, you'll notice that they definitely have a little bit of a tightness, a little bit stiff spinning. And that's because you're bearing, this nut here is bearing down on the pulley, which is bearing down on these and squishing to an exact distance. And these guys here are set at an exact distance. So they're either in spec or they're not. Anyways, for whatever it's worth, that's pretty much all I have to say about this. Good luck with your project, and happy mowing.